The metal was crushing my chest, blood filling my mouth as I watched my husband David crawl through the wreckage toward her. You know that moment when your entire world shatters, when everything you believed about love, about marriage, about the person sleeping next to you every night crumbles into dust. I lived that moment. I died in that moment. My name is Clara Bennett, and 6 months ago I should have been just another statistic, another tragic car accident victim, another grieving widower's sob story. But death, it seems, had other plans for me. Let me take you back to that night, the night everything ended and everything began. We were driving to our anniversary getaway. 7 years of marriage, and David insisted we needed to reconnect. How romantic, right? Except I didn't know then that reconnecting meant saying goodbye forever. I didn't know that the brake lines in our car had been cut. I didn't know that my loving husband had planned my murder down to the last detail. I was sitting in the passenger seat, humming along to some random song on the radio, when I felt the car picking up speed. "David, slow down," I said, but he just gripped the steering wheel tighter. His knuckles were white and there was something in his eyes. Something I'd never seen before. Fear. "I can't," he whispered, and that's when I realised we weren't slowing down. We were speeding up. The curve ahead was coming fast, too fast, and David was pumping the brakes frantically. Nothing. "David, what's happening?" I screamed, but he was already bracing for impact. The last thing I remember before the world exploded into twisted metal and shattered glass was seeing a blonde woman in the back seat. Sarah, his secretary, his mistress, the woman I didn't even know existed. When I came to, I was trapped. The dashboard had crumpled inward, pinning my legs, and something sharp was digging into my chest with every breath. Blood was everywhere, mine, and the taste of iron filled my mouth as I tried to call for help. But David was already moving, not toward me, not toward his wife of 7 years who had loved him, supported him, built a life with him. He was crawling through the wreckage toward her, toward Sarah, whose blonde hair was matted with blood, but whose chest was still rising and falling. "David!" I tried to scream, but it came out as a whisper. "David, help me!" He didn't even look back. I watched as he pulled her unconscious body from the back seat, cradling her against his chest like she was made of glass, like she was precious, like she was worth saving. And me? I was dying alone in the darkness, listening to my own ribs crack with each desperate breath, watching the man I loved carry another woman to safety while I bled out in the driver's seat. My last thought before everything went black was how stupid I'd been, how naive, how completely and utterly blind. But here's the thing about death. Sometimes it's not the end. Sometimes it's just the intermission. I woke up 6 months earlier in our bedroom. David's arm draped across my waist like nothing had changed. Except everything had changed, because I remembered every detail of what was coming. Every lie, every betrayal, every moment of that crash. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. The calendar on my phone showed a date I'd already lived. The news was reporting stories I'd already heard. David was getting ready for work at a company where Sarah didn't work yet, humming the same song he'd hummed that morning 6 months ago. But then, I found it. The receipt. Hotel Belmont, room 237, the night he told me he was working late. The same receipt I'd found in his jacket pocket the week before the crash in my previous life. It wasn't a dream, it wasn't a breakdown. Somehow, impossibly, I'd been given a second chance. And this time, I wasn't going to waste it. Playing the perfect, trusting wife. This time, I was going to be the architect of his destruction. I started that very day. While David was at work, probably already planning how to meet Sarah, I began my own planning. I pulled our financial records, memorized every account number, every investment, every asset we'd built together. I researched divorce lawyers, private investigators, and most importantly, I researched Sarah Mitchell. 26 years old, marketing degree, worked for a small firm across town. Single, ambitious, and about to become very important to my husband's life, and to his death. You see, I knew exactly how their affair would unfold. I'd lived through it once, discovered it too late, and died for it. But this time, I wasn't going to be the victim stumbling upon hotel receipts and suspicious phone calls. This time, I was going to be the puppet master. I showed up at Sarah's office that Friday afternoon, dressed in my most approachable outfit, carrying coffee, and wearing my brightest smile. "Sarah Mitchell?" I asked, extending my hand. "I'm Clara. I heard through the grapevine that you might be perfect for a position at my husband's company." She looked confused, which was exactly what I wanted. "I'm sorry, I don't understand." "My husband, David Bennett, runs Bennett Marketing Solutions. We're expanding and we need someone with your exact qualifications. Someone young, hungry, willing to work closely with senior management." I watched her eyes light up, just like they had before. "I wasn't really looking to change jobs," she said, but I could hear the interest in her voice. "Well, think about it. Here's my card. David's card too. He's expecting your call." Of course, David had no idea I was about to drop a bomb in his lap, but I knew him well enough to know exactly how he'd react when a beautiful young woman called him about a job opening that didn't exist. He'd create one. That night, I cooked his favourite dinner and listened to him talk about his day, nodding in all the right places, asking all the right questions. The perfect wife, the woman who trusted him completely. "Oh, by the way," I said casually as we were clearing the dishes, "I met someone today who might be perfect for your team. Sarah Mitchell, I gave her your card." David's hand froze on his wineglass. "You did what?" "Found you a new team member. She's got the exact qualifications you've been looking for. Young, ambitious, eager to please." I smiled sweetly. "I thought you'd be grateful." He recovered quickly, but I caught that moment of panic, that flash of something that told me Sarah Mitchell was already on his radar, already in his thoughts. "That's thoughtful of you, Clara, but I can handle my own hiring." "Of course you can, darling. I just thought I'd help speed things along." 3 days later, Sarah called. By the end of the week, she had a job at Bennett Marketing Solutions, and by the end of the month, she was working late with David, just like before, except this time, I was ready. I installed tracking software on his phone while he slept. I had our accountant send me copies of every financial transaction. I hired a private investigator to document everything. And most importantly, I started building my own relationship with Sarah. It started innocently enough. Lunch invitations, coffee dates, shopping trips. I became the concerned wife who worried that her husband was working his new employee too hard. "He's always been a workaholic," I confided to Sarah over lattes. "I just hope he's not burning you out with all these late nights." "Oh, no, Mrs. Bennett. David's been wonderful, so supportive." Supportive. That's what she called it when he started touching her shoulder during meetings. When he started driving her home after those late nights. When he started looking at her the way he used to look at me. But here's what Sarah didn't know, what David didn't know, what nobody knew. I was documenting everything. Every hotel receipt, every lie, every moment of their pathetic little love affair. I was building a case that would destroy him completely. And the beautiful part, I was also building something else. Something that would make my revenge so much sweeter. I was making Sarah fall in love with me, not romantically, not at first, but emotionally. I became her confidant, her trusted friend, the one person she could talk to about her complicated feelings for her married boss. I listened to her doubts, her fears, her dreams. I comforted her when David was distant, celebrated with her when he was attentive. I became everything to her that David would never be. Real, honest, present, and all the while I was preparing for the moment when I would reveal the truth, when I would show her exactly who David Bennett really was and exactly what he'd done to the woman who loved him. Because the crash that killed me, it wasn't an accident. I'd found the evidence hidden in David's home office, the research on brake lines and insurance policies, the same evidence I'd found too late in my first life. This time, I found it early, and this time I was going to use it. But first, I needed to make sure David's destruction was complete. I needed to take everything he loved, everything he valued, everything he thought he could count on. His money, his business, his mistress, his freedom. And then, when he had nothing left, when he was broken and desperate and finally understood what it felt like to lose everything, I would tell him the truth. I would tell him that I remembered dying, that I remembered watching him choose her over me, that I remembered every single thing he'd done to the woman who'd loved him, and then I would destroy him all over again. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. David's voice from the kitchen. "Clara, can you get that? I'm in the middle of something." I smiled as I reached for the phone, because I knew exactly who was calling, and I knew exactly what they were going to say. My revenge was just beginning. I picked up the phone, already knowing what was coming. "Hello, Bennett residence." "Mrs. Bennett? This is Detective Morrison from the police department. We need to speak with your husband about his vehicle." My heart should have been racing. In my first life, this call had terrified me. But now I was prepared. "He's right here, Detective. May I ask what this is about?" "We found some irregularities with his brake system during a routine traffic stop. We need him to come in for questioning." David appeared in the doorway, his face pale. He'd heard enough. In my previous life, this call had come after the crash, when it was too late to matter. But I'd made an anonymous tip 3 days ago, reporting a suspicious vehicle in our neighbourhood. Amazing how a little foreknowledge could change everything. "Tell them I'll be right there," David said, his voice tight. After he left, I sat in our living room, staring at the family photos on the mantel. 7 years of marriage, and in every single picture I looked genuinely happy, genuinely in love. God, I'd been such a fool. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Mrs. Bennett, I'm so worried about David. He seems stressed lately. Do you think everything's okay?" Perfect. My caring, concerned little mistress, worried about her married lover's well-being. If only she knew what he'd planned to do to me. I typed back, "He's been working so hard lately. Maybe we should grab coffee tomorrow. I could use someone to talk to." Her response came immediately. "I'd love that. I've been feeling so confused about everything." Confused. That was the key word. In my first life, Sarah had been confident, sure of herself, convinced that David would leave me for her. But this time, I was making sure she questioned everything. Every gesture, every promise, every moment of their affair. I'd been planting seeds of doubt for weeks now. Casual comments about David's past relationships, how he cheated on his college girlfriend with me, how he'd always been charmed by the thrill of the forbidden. I'd made sure she overheard phone conversations about our anniversary plans, seen the expensive jewellery he'd bought me, witnessed the way he still kissed me goodbye every morning. "He's just going through a phase," I'd told her during our last lunch. "Men his age, they sometimes need to feel young again. It's nothing personal." But I could see it was eating at her. The uncertainty, the growing realization that maybe she wasn't special after all. Maybe she was just convenient. David came home 3 hours later looking shaken. "They said someone called in a tip about our car. They want to inspect it tomorrow." "That's odd," I said, not looking up from my magazine. "What kind of tip?" "Something about suspicious activity. Probably just some nosy neighbour." I nodded sympathetically. "I'm sure it's nothing, darling. You haven't done anything wrong." The irony wasn't lost on me. He'd done everything wrong, and I was about to make sure the whole world knew it. But first, I needed to secure my assets. Over the next week, while David was distracted by his legal troubles and his affair, I worked methodically. I transferred funds to accounts he didn't know about, liquidated investments, and started building my own financial empire. The beautiful thing about being married to someone for 7 years is that you know all their weaknesses. David was brilliant at marketing, but terrible with details. He trusted me to handle our personal finances, never questioned my decisions, never looked too closely at the paperwork he signed. Big mistake. I also reached out to competitors using information I'd gathered about David's business strategies. In my first life, I'd been the supportive wife who helped him succeed. This time, I was the insider who helped his competitors destroy him. Bennett Marketing is about to lose their biggest client, I told Marcus Webb, David's former business partner turned rival. Something about a scandal involving the CEO and an employee. Marcus's eyes had lit up. What kind of scandal? The kind that makes companies want to distance themselves very quickly. 3 days later, Bennett Marketing's largest client pulled their contract. Then another, and another. David was hemorrhaging money, and he had no idea why. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I started working on Sarah more directly. Our coffee dates became longer, more intimate. I shared stories about my marriage, carefully crafted to make her question everything she thought she knew about David. He can be so charming, I told her one afternoon, stirring my latte thoughtfully. But sometimes I wonder if he's capable of real love, or if he just loves the idea of being loved. Sarah shifted uncomfortably. What do you mean? Oh, nothing serious. It's just, he's always been attracted to the chase, the excitement of winning someone over. But once he has them, I shrugged. Well, I suppose that's why he works so much, always looking for the next challenge. I watched her face carefully. She was thinking about their relationship, about how David had pursued her so intensely at first, but lately seemed distracted, distant. Has he ever... She started, then stopped. What, sweetheart? Has he ever cheated on you? I let my face fall, just slightly. I don't like to think about it. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked. No, it's okay. I've learned not to ask questions I don't want the answers to. The seed was planted. Over the following weeks, I watered it carefully. I made sure Sarah saw me crying after phone calls that never happened. I mentioned marriage counselling appointments that didn't exist. I painted a picture of a woman slowly discovering that her husband was exactly the kind of man who would have an affair. And all the while, I was documenting everything. The private investigator I'd hired was getting photos, recordings, evidence of every meeting, every kiss, every lie David told me while he was falling deeper in love with his secretary. But the real masterstroke was what I was doing to Sarah herself. I started small compliments about her intelligence, her insight, her emotional depth. I told her how refreshing it was to have a real conversation with someone who understood complexity, who wasn't afraid of difficult emotions. David's lucky to have you working for him, I said one evening when she joined us for dinner. You bring out the best in him. She blushed, and I caught David's sharp look. He was starting to notice how close Sarah and I were becoming, how she sought my approval, my attention, my advice about everything, including him. I don't know what to do, she confessed during one of our late-night phone calls. He says he loves me, but nothing's changing. I feel like I'm living in limbo. What do you want to happen? I asked gently. I want him to choose me. Really choose me. Not just in secret, but in daylight. I want to matter more than convenience. You deserve someone who doesn't make you question your worth, I told her. Someone who sees you as more than just an escape from their real life. I was becoming her conscience, her emotional anchor, the voice of reason in her chaotic affair. And slowly, carefully, I was making her fall in love with the idea of being truly seen, truly valued, truly loved by someone who wasn't David. Meanwhile, David's world was crumbling. The police investigation was intensifying. His business was failing. His wife was becoming increasingly distant, and his mistress was becoming increasingly demanding. I need to know where this is going, Sarah told him during one of their hotel meetings. I knew because I'd bugged his car, his office, even the hotel room they frequented. You know I can't leave Clara right now, he said, not with everything that's happening. Then, when? When will you be able to leave her? Silence, because David had never planned to leave me. He'd planned to kill me. I need time, he said finally. How much time? I don't know. I heard Sarah's sigh through the recording. I feel like I'm wasting my life waiting for something that's never going to happen. That's not true, isn't it? When you look at me, do you see your future, or do you see a convenient distraction? David couldn't answer because he knew, just like I knew, that Sarah was right. She was never going to be his wife. She was never going to be his priority. She was just the woman he was using to make himself feel young and desired while he planned to murder the woman who actually loved him. But Sarah didn't know that. Not yet. I've been thinking, she said during our next coffee date, maybe I should look for another job. Why would you do that? This thing with David, it's not going anywhere. and I'm starting to feel like I'm living someone else's life. What would your real life look like? She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, but it would be with someone who chose me every day, not just when it was convenient. You deserve that kind of love, I told her, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. You deserve someone who sees you as their first choice, not their secret. She looked at me with such gratitude, such relief at being understood. Thank you for being such a good friend, Clara. I don't know what I'd do without you. Neither did I, because my plan was working perfectly. David was losing everything, his business, his freedom, his secret affair. But I wasn't just taking his possessions. I was taking his people. His employees were jumping ship, his friends were distancing themselves from the scandal, and his precious mistress was starting to realize that he'd never been worth the sacrifice. But the best part was still coming, because I had one more surprise for both of them, one more twist that would complete my revenge and show them both exactly what it meant to underestimate Clara Bennett. My phone rang. David's panicked voice. Clara, I need you to come to the station. They are arresting me. I smiled as I grabbed my keys. It was time for the final act. I walked into the police station like I was attending a funeral. In a way, I was. David sat in the interrogation room, his expensive suit wrinkled, his perfect hair dishevelled. Through the one-way glass, I watched him fidget with his wedding ring, the same ring he'd worn while planning my murder. Mrs. Bennett, Detective Morrison approached me with a grim expression. We need to talk. Of course, whatever you need. He led me to a small office, closing the door behind us. We found evidence that your husband tampered with your vehicle's brake system. We believe he was planning to harm you. I let my face crumble, let the tears come. That's impossible. David would never. We're going away for our anniversary next weekend. Mum, we found receipts for brake fluid and cutting tools in his workshop. We also discovered a significant life insurance policy he took out on you 3 months ago. 3 months ago. Exactly when his affair with Sarah had gotten serious, when he'd started planning his perfect crime. I don't understand, I whispered. Why would he want to hurt me? Detective Morrison hesitated. We have reason to believe your husband was having an affair. I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. An affair? With who? We can't discuss specifics, but we'll need you to think about anyone who might have been particularly close to your husband recently. Sarah. They meant Sarah, but they wanted me to figure it out myself. How thoughtful of them. His secretary, I said quietly. Sarah Mitchell. She's been working late with him, and I noticed he seemed different around her. We'll need to speak with her as well. Perfect. Everything was falling into place exactly as I'd planned. I left the station and drove straight to Sarah's apartment. She opened the door with red-rimmed eyes, clearly having heard the news. Clara, I'm so sorry. I heard about David's arrest. This is all so crazy. I pushed past her into the apartment, my shoulders shaking with manufactured sobs. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Her face went pale. What? Were you sleeping with my husband? The silence stretched between us like a wire about to snap. Finally, she nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Clara. I never meant for it to happen. It started so innocently. And then, how long? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. 3 months. The same time frame as the insurance policy. The same time frame as the brake tampering. David had started planning my murder the moment he'd started sleeping with Sarah. Did you know, I asked, about what he was planning to do to me? What? No, God, no, Clara. I would never. I had no idea he was capable of something like that. I studied her face. She was telling the truth. Sarah had been just as much a pawn in David's game as I had been. The difference was she'd been the willing pawn. I need to know everything, I said. Every conversation, every promise he made you, every lie he told. The police are going to question you, and I need to be prepared. She broke down then, telling me about their late-night conversations, the hotel meetings, the way David had convinced her that our marriage was already over, that he just needed time to figure out how to leave me without destroying me financially. He said he loved me, she sobbed. He said once everything was settled, we'd be together. He made me believe I was his future. And you believed him? I wanted to. I needed to. I've been so lonely, Clara, and he made me feel special, like I mattered. Looking at her broken expression, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered watching David carry her unconscious body from the wreckage while I died alone, and the sympathy evaporated. Sarah, I said gently, I need to tell you something. Something that's going to change everything you think you know about David. She looked up at me with those tear-filled eyes, so trusting, so vulnerable. That car accident he was planning, the one where he cut the brake lines. You were supposed to be there too. Her face went white. What? Our anniversary trip. He invited you, didn't he? Said it would be our last chance to be together before he left me. She nodded slowly, the pieces clicking together in her mind. You were never supposed to survive that crash, Sarah. He was planning to kill both of us and collect the insurance money. Make it look like a tragic accident where he lost both his wife and his beloved secretary. No, she whispered. No, that's not... He wouldn't. Think about it. Really think. Did he ever actually make concrete plans to leave me? Did he ever introduce you to his friends, his family? Did he ever talk about a future that didn't require my death? I watched her face as the truth hit her. David had never planned to leave me for her. He'd planned to kill us both and start fresh somewhere else with the insurance money. But why? She asked. Why would he do that? Because David doesn't know how to love anyone but himself. We were both just obstacles to the life he wanted. Sarah was quiet for a long time, processing everything. Finally, she looked up at me with a strange expression. Clara, can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you being so kind to me? I slept with your husband. I helped destroy your marriage. You should hate me. I smiled, and for the first time in months, it was genuine. Because you're not the enemy, Sarah. You're just another one of his victims. That night, I held Sarah as she cried. I comforted her as she grappled with the reality of what David had planned to do to both of us. I was there for her in a way that David never had been, even during their affair, and something beautiful happened. Something I'd planned but hadn't expected to feel so deeply. Sarah began to see me. Really see me. Not as David's wife, not as the woman standing between her and her happiness, but as someone who understood her pain, who had been betrayed just as deeply as she had. I feel so stupid, she whispered against my shoulder. How could I not see what he really was? Because you saw what you needed to see, I told her. What he wanted you to see. That's what manipulators do. They show you the version of themselves that makes you fall in love. You're so wise, she said, pulling back to look at me. So understanding. I don't deserve your kindness. Everyone deserves kindness, Sarah, especially from someone who understands what you're going through. Over the next week, as David sat in jail awaiting trial, Sarah and I grew closer. She started coming over every day, helping me deal with the media attention, the legal proceedings, the slow unravelling of everything David had built. But more than that, she started opening up to me in ways she'd never opened up to David. She told me about her childhood, her dreams, her fears. She shared parts of herself that she'd never trusted anyone with, and I found myself sharing too. Not the whole truth, not yet, but pieces of who I really was, the woman who'd been buried under 7 years of trying to be the perfect wife. I feel like I'm seeing you for the first time, Sarah said one evening as we sat on my couch sharing a bottle of wine. The real you, not just David's wife. What do you see? I asked. She was quiet for a moment, studying my face. I see someone who's been pretending to be smaller than she really is. Someone who's been hiding her strength behind a smile. And is that someone you could care about? I asked carefully. Her answer came as a whisper. I think I already do. The kiss, when it came, was soft and tentative. Nothing like the desperate, guilty kisses she'd shared with David. This was something pure, something real. I'm sorry, she said, pulling away. I shouldn't have... Don't apologise, I told her. Not for this. But you're married, and I'm the woman who... You're the woman who was lied to, just like I was. And right now, you're the only person in the world who understands what I'm going through. She looks at me with such tenderness, such genuine affection. What does this mean? It means we're not going to let David destroy us, I said. Either of us. The next morning, I woke up with Sarah in my arms. Her blonde hair spread across my pillow like silk. For a moment, I just lay there, watching her sleep, marveling at how perfectly my plan had worked. But then, something unexpected happened. Looking at her peaceful face, I felt something I hadn't planned for. Guilt. Sarah had been a victim too, in her own way. She'd been manipulated, used, and nearly murdered by the same man who'd betrayed me. And now I was manipulating her again, using her feelings for me as part of my revenge against David. Except, was I? The feelings I had for Sarah, the connection we'd built, the way she made me feel seen and valued, none of that was fake. It had started as manipulation, but somewhere along the way, it had become real. Maybe that was the most beautiful part of my revenge, taking David's mistress and making her mine, not through deception, but through genuine care and understanding. My phone buzzed. A text from David's lawyer. He wants to see you. He says he has something important to tell you about the night of the planned accident. I smiled as I deleted the message. David could wait. Right now, I had more important things to focus on, like the woman in my arms who was slowly waking up, looking at me with eyes full of something that had never been there when she looked at David. Love. Real, honest, unconditional love. But David's message had mentioned something about the night of the accident. Something important. Something that would change everything. And as Sarah stirred in my arms, I realized my perfect revenge was about to get complicated. I couldn't ignore David's message forever. 3 days later, I sat across from my husband in the prison visiting room. Sarah's hand still warm in my memory. David looked broken, hollow eyes, unshaven face, the expensive confidence stripped away to reveal the coward underneath. "Clara," he said, his voice cracking, "thank God you came. What do you want, David?" "I need to tell you something about the accident. Something the police don't know." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "You mean the accident where you planned to murder me?" He flinched. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that." "Which part? The murder or getting caught?" "You don't understand. That night, when I cut the brake lines, I was supposed to be alone in the car." My blood turned to ice. "What?" "It was supposed to be suicide, Clara. I was drowning in debt, the business was failing, and I couldn't face losing everything. I figured if I died in an accident, you'd get the insurance money, be taken care of. But Sarah was never supposed to be there. She showed up at the last minute, said she couldn't let me drive to our anniversary alone while she stayed behind. And you got in the passenger seat like you always did, and I couldn't stop you without explaining why." The room was spinning. "So you're saying you tried to kill yourself, but ended up trying to kill us instead?" "I tried to call it off. I tried to fix the brakes before we left, but there wasn't time. And Sarah was already in the back seat. And you were so excited about our trip. So you decided to murder 2 innocent women instead of facing your problems like a man?" "No! I was trying to save you both. When the brakes failed, I made a choice. I could steer into the tree and kill all 3 of us, or I could try to save who I could." "And you chose Sarah?" "I chose the person I could reach first." His voice broke. "Clara, I've loved you for 7 years. Do you really think I'd plan to murder you for money?" I stared at him, my mind reeling. In my previous life, I died believing David had chosen Sarah because he loved her more. But what if I'd been wrong? What if it had just been terrible timing? A desperate man's suicide attempt gone horribly wrong? "The affair was my way of punishing myself," he said quietly. "I was planning to die, Clara. I figured if I was already betraying you by leaving you, what was one more betrayal? I threw myself into the affair because I thought it would make dying easier. That's the most selfish thing I've ever heard. I know it was cowardly and stupid and wrong. But Clara, I need you to know, when push came to shove, when I had to choose who to save, it wasn't about love. It was about logistics. Sarah was closer. That's all. I wanted to hate him for this revelation. I wanted to cling to my righteous anger, my perfect revenge. But sitting there, looking at this broken man who destroyed 3 lives through cowardice rather than malice, I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. It doesn't matter, I said finally. Your intentions don't erase what you did. I know. I needed you to know the truth before. Before what? He looked down at his hands. My lawyer says they're offering a plea deal. Attempted manslaughter instead of attempted murder. I'd be out in 5 years. And? I'm not taking it. I blinked. Why not? Because I deserve to pay for what I did. To both of you. I'm going to plead guilty to attempted murder and serve the full sentence. David, 25 to life, Clara. I'll die in prison, and you'll be free to live the life I should have given you. I left the prison in a daze, David's words echoing in my mind. Everything I'd believed about that night, about his motivations, about the choice he'd made, it was all wrong. But did it matter? Did his intentions change the fact that I died alone while he saved another woman? Did it excuse the affair, the lies, the cowardice? I drove home to find Sarah in my kitchen, making dinner like she belonged there, like we were a couple, like this was our life now. How did it go? She asked, wrapping her arms around me. He told me the truth about the accident. Sarah's body tensed. What? Truth? I told her everything. The suicide attempt, the failed brakes, the impossible choice David had faced in those final moments. So, he didn't mean to hurt us, Sarah said quietly. No, he just meant to hurt himself and took us down with him. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Finally, she asked, Does this change anything between us? I looked at this woman who'd shared my husband's bed, who'd helped destroy my marriage, who'd fallen in love with me while I was orchestrating my revenge, the woman I'd manipulated into loving me, who now held my heart in ways I'd never expected. I need to tell you something, I said. Something about why I came back. Came back? I took a deep breath. Sarah, I need you to listen very carefully, and I need you not to interrupt until I'm finished. For the next hour, I told her everything. The crash, my death, waking up 6 months in the past, the revenge plan, the manipulation, the way I'd orchestrated our entire relationship. When I finished, Sarah was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You're saying you died and came back to life for revenge? I know how it sounds. Clara, that's impossible. Is it? How else would I have known about the brake lines before the police found them? How would I have known about your affair before it started? How would I have known exactly how to tear David's life apart? Sarah was quiet, processing. Even if what you're saying is true, you manipulated me. Everything between us was a lie. It started as manipulation, I admitted. But Sarah, what I feel for you now, that's real. More real than anything I ever felt with David. How can I trust that? How can I trust anything you say when you've admitted to orchestrating our entire relationship? Because I'm telling you the truth now, because I'm choosing you over my revenge. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her the text I'd been composing. I was going to expose David's suicide attempt to the media, destroy what little sympathy he might have gained from his confession, but I'm not going to send it. Why not? Because you're right. He's already destroyed, and continuing this revenge isn't going to bring back the woman who died in that crash. She's gone, and I can't live her life anymore. Sarah looked at the unsent message, then at me. What happens now? That's up to you. I understand if you can't forgive me for manipulating you. I understand if you can't love someone who's capable of the things I've done. She was quiet for so long I thought she was going to leave. Finally, she spoke. The woman you were before the crash, the one who trusted David, who believed in love, who died thinking her husband didn't care about her. She sounds like a good person. She was naive. Maybe. But she was also capable of forgiveness, of seeing the best in people. And the woman I am now? Sarah looked at me with those beautiful eyes that had seen too much pain. The woman you are now survived death, orchestrated the downfall of a man who betrayed her, and fell in love despite planning not to. She's complicated, and dangerous and absolutely fascinating. Which woman would you choose? I'd choose both, she said simply, because they're both you, Clara. The innocent woman who loved too much and the vengeful woman who loved too little. They're both part of who you are now. She reached for my hands. The question is, who do you choose to be going forward? I looked at this woman who'd seen me at my worst and my most vulnerable, who'd been both my victim and my salvation. I choose to be someone who deserves your love. Then, delete the message. I did. 6 months later, we were living in a small town 3 states away, running a bookstore café that Sarah had always dreamed of opening. David was serving his sentence, having pled guilty to attempted murder despite his lawyer's protests. The media had moved on to other scandals, other tragedies. But sometimes, late at night, I'd catch Sarah watching me with a strange expression. "What are you thinking about?" I'd ask. "I'm wondering if you really came back from the dead, or if you're just the most convincing liar I've ever met. Does it matter?" "I suppose not. Either way, I'm living a life I never would have had without you. Do you regret it?" She'd smile then, the same smile that had first made me want to protect her from David's lies. Never. But there was one thing I never told Sarah. One final secret I kept locked away. The night before David's sentencing, I'd received a call from Detective Morrison. "Mrs. Bennet, we found something in your husband's effects. A letter addressed to you." The letter was 4 pages long, written in David's careful handwriting. In it, he confessed everything. Not just the suicide attempt and the failed breaks, but something else. Something that changed everything I thought I knew about my death and my return. "Clara," the letter began, "if you're reading this, then you know the truth about the accident. But there's something else you need to know. Something I discovered in my cell, when I was preparing to face what I'd done. You didn't die in that crash. The paramedics found you with a pulse, weak, barely there, but alive. You were in a coma for 6 months. The doctors said you might never wake up, that even if you did, you might not remember anything from before the accident. But you did wake up. And when you did, you remembered everything. Not because you died and come back, but because your mind had spent 6 months processing the trauma, putting together pieces you'd been too trusting to see before. The brake lines, the insurance policy, the affair, your subconscious had picked up on all of it. And when you woke up, you remembered not just the crash, but everything leading up to it. I know you'll never forgive me for what I did. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I needed you to know. You didn't come back from the dead for revenge. You came back from the edge of death for love, for the chance to live the life you deserved. I hope you find it." I never showed Sarah the letter. I burned it the night I received it, watching David's words turn to ash, because the truth didn't matter anymore. Whether I died and been reborn or simply woken up from a coma with perfect clarity about my life's lies, the result was the same. I was free. Sarah was free. And David was exactly where he belonged. Sometimes, late at night, I'd wonder if I was still in that coma, dreaming of the perfect revenge and the perfect love story. But then Sarah would shift beside me, her hand finding mine in the darkness, and I'd know it didn't matter. Real or imagined, this was the life I'd chosen. This was the love I'd fought for. And this time, I was going to make it count. Because the best revenge isn't destroying your enemy. It's building a life so beautiful that their destruction becomes irrelevant. And as I drifted off to sleep in Sarah's arms, I couldn't help but smile. Death, or a coma, or whatever had brought me back, had given me the greatest gift of all. A second chance to get love right.